All right, welcome everyone. It's high noon. This is a webinar about resources for congregations, specifically from the financial side of things. We will begin with an overview of the Treasurer's Manual. The Congregational Treasurer's Manual, that'll take about half of our time, and then we will talk to some partner organizations. We have some special guests that will be coming on to talk specifically about the LCMS Foundation and some tools that Concordia Plans has created on our behalf. We will then talk a little bit about compensation guides. There are really two tools that we'll be discussing, and then there will be some miscellaneous other things to discuss. And so I'm going to jump right in with the Congregational Treasurer's Manual. The Congregational Treasurer's Manual is a tool that has been created. It's been around for quite a while. Some people know about it, some people don't know about it. And but there's a lot of resources in there that you wouldn't think are for treasurers, and really some of those resources aren't for treasurers, but they're for other members of the congregation. And so what I would like to do is just highlight the various chapters and talk about them a little bit. The URL that you see down there, www.lcms.org, that's the last dash between org and CTM. That should not be a dot, that should be a slash or / the one above the or below the question mark. So if you want to access that Treasurer's Manual, that's how you do that. So the Congregational Treasurer's Manual is made up of 26 chapters and 2 volumes. The 2 volumes, the first volume are chapters that change very regularly. There are IRS rules in there, and the IRS likes to change things up every year. And then the second volume is things that are a little more static. They change periodically, and then we do update them and look at them on a regular basis, but they are not published other than perhaps every 5 years in that second volume. There are some autofill forms that are available in the Congregational Treasurer's Manual if you get it online. And so, if you're looking for a form, look there, and maybe you can autofill some stuff and make your life a little easier. So a high-level review of the Treasurer's Manual begins with Section 1, and Section 1 deals with employment issues. And the first issue that we in the LCMS really deal with is the whole concept of ministers of the gospel. Ministers of the gospel is actually a term that's used by the IRS. They actually use the word gospel, which is quite surprising in and of itself. Ministers of the gospel in the LCMS context are those who are rostered church workers. So they are on the roster of Synod. Essentially, to become a rostered church worker, you have to either be colloquized or go through one of the Concordia universities or the seminary. And then also be actually in ministry working as a minister of the gospel. The second chapter then deals with housing allowance and parsonage, and what that does is that is the specifics about the IRS code and kind of a benefit that's given to ministers of the gospel through the housing allowance. The IRS allows that, but you have to follow certain steps, and Chapter 2 outlines those steps and what you must do. Chapter 3 then talks about lay employees, so other employees within the congregation, and how some of those should be treated. Chapter 4 is about the Concordia Plans, and this is specific to employment. What does Concordia Plans offer in terms of health benefits, in terms of retirement benefits and disability benefits. Those three are kind of the core benefits that are offered by Concordia Plans. But Concordia Plans does a way more than just those three pieces. And you'll become aware of some of those other pieces in a few minutes here. Chapter 5 talks about tax favored savings plans. I always want to say flavored. So tax favored savings plans are those plans like your HSA, which is a health savings account, FSA, flexible spending arrangement. You also have Concordia CRISP, so Concordia Retirement Savings Plan. There's also a Roth component that you can get involved in with that. And so Chapter 5 kind of deals with all of those things. Chapter 6 talks about business expenses, and basically the basic concept in Chapter 6 is that you can offer allowances which are taxable, or you can have an accountable plan where information is submitted. For example, mileage is submitted on a periodic basis once a month. Expenses, invoices are submitted once a month, and those are reimbursed then. So you have an accountable plan, reimbursement plan, or you have an allowance. Reimbursement accountable plans are not taxable to the recipient of the money. The allowances are taxable. Chapter 7 then talks about payroll and other informational returns. So this is where you would find some of those fillable forms when you're getting ready, especially at year end or a quarter end, to do the 941s, the W-2s, the W-3s, getting W-9s, which are information returns that you get from people that provide services to you. All those sorts of tax issues, payroll and otherwise, mostly payroll, 1099s are in there as well. So that chapter is utilized a lot at the end of the year and at the end of the quarter. Then you get to volume, or section 2 of volume 1, and chapter 8 really is one of the chapters that I get the most questions on, which is tax exempt status. And there's a product out there called TechSoup. TechSoup is a company that provides technology to not-for-profits at a reduced rate. And quite often when congregations get involved with that, the first thing they need to do is prove that they are tax exempt from the federal side of things. So to prove your tax exempt status, Chapter 8, Section 400 actually has some letters from the IRS, and you could submit those letters, but oftentimes those letters don't suffice, and you also need then a letter from Synod stating that you are a member organization of a group letter ruling with the IRS. And once you have that will usually suffice for satisfying the organization's needs. Chapter 9 is related to Lutheran schools and early childhood centers. The big thing in this chapter is that if your congregation is providing free or reduced child care through the early childhood center, or education through the school to the workers or to members, that the IRS has very specific rules on what you can and can't do. And this chapter will give you a lot of guidance in that arena so that you can set up a program that is legal and the IRS won't have problems with. Chapter 10 is about contributions by donors. So contributions by donors, is pretty straightforward on its face, but there are some twists. Some of the twists are, if donations are over a certain dollar amount, that documentation needs to be made in various ways. And then you also have contributions that are of non-cash nature. And those contributions need to be documented specifically in specific ways in specific IRS forms, and non-cash contributions over certain dollar amounts also need different documentation. So this chapter will help you with that. And we have another resource that we'll get to in a minute on that. Chapter 11 is about unrelated business income. So if your congregation decides, hey, we want to raise a little bit of extra money, we are going to rent out our parking lot, well, be careful. Look at chapter 11 and look at the rules around that. If you raise more than $2,000, you need to understand the unrelated business income tax, what the consequences are, when you can do it, and when you should and shouldn't do it. It's not whether you can do it, it's whether you should and what are the consequences of doing it. Chapter 12 is tax and compliance matters unique to states. There are two things that really come to mind on the states. One is the whole area of workers' comp in the state of Missouri. So the state of Missouri has specific laws that are different from the laws of other states, and you need to understand what they are. The other item that comes to mind immediately is unemployment taxes. So in Missouri, we do not pay into the unemployment compensation system as a church body, but there are steps that you need to take when you bring employees on board so that they understand that they are not covered by unemployment taxes. So those are some of the things that are covered in section 2. And now we move to section 3. And section 3 is about establishing and administering the organization. And, most of our churches are already organized and incorporated, but sometimes you want to change your organizational structure. And there are steps you need to take when you do that with the state. There's also a process that needs to take place for most congregations every 2 years, and that is that you register with the Secretary of State. You pay, I believe it's $20 or $25 fee, and you get a certificate of continuity or something like that. It's something that you need to be aware of and be doing regularly for your congregation. There are some congregations that were established prior to a certain date, and the rules are different for some of those congregations, the really old congregations in the state of Missouri. So be aware. The best thing to do is just go to the Secretary of State website and try to find your congregation. A lot of the congregation names are in German, and so you need to understand evangelisch is evangelical, and Lutherisch is Lutheran, and just some of those German words. And when you're looking for your congregation, sometimes it's easier just to look for the city and go through all the corporations that are in the city. Chapter 14 is about responsibilities of church financial officers. It's not just church financial officers, and the caveat here is that every congregation's officers have slightly different responsibilities. So you need to understand within your own context what the responsibilities are, but this chapter will give you an idea kind of what the responsibilities in a typical congregation would be. Excuse me. Chapter 15 is purchasing agreements. So there are some purchasing agreements that are agreements that the synod has entered into that apply to all congregations and can be accessed. And so it's worthwhile to occasionally look to see what those purchase agreements are and see if you can make use of some of them. Computerized systems and technology. Concordia Publishing House has created a computerized system. Most congregations, I believe, use QuickBooks, or many congregations, probably half use QuickBooks on the accounting side of things. But the chapter, especially if you're looking on changing systems, is worth having a look at. Section 4 is supporting organizations. And so the first one listed here is Synod, the International Center and district offices. So I am in the district office. I work for the Missouri district. And the Missouri district is essentially all the Lutheran congregations, with one or two exceptions, that are in the state of Missouri. That is, LCMS congregations within the state of Missouri are part of the Missouri district. The International Center covers not just national missions, but also international missions, and that's why they call themselves the International Center. So that's just part of our structure, but they also support us in a number of ways, and I will give you a very good resource at the end here, a place to look for some resources. Okay, so the next item then is planned giving and investment services. So that is kind of what the LCMS Foundation does. We will have a special guest in just a minute here that will talk a little bit about some of the services that they offer. And then we have Church Extension Fund, which is Chapter 19. And again, we were going to have a special guest, but she couldn't make it. So guess what? I'm your special guest. I will talk a little bit about the services that they offer. And then a new chapter is coming in 2024. I don't know what that chapter is. I suspect that it is probably the Lutheran Federal Credit Union. If you haven't heard of them, you may want to look them up online just to see what they offer. That's different from, especially from Lutheran Church Extension Fund. The Extension Fund created the credit union because the Extension Fund couldn't do certain things in certain states. Now we move on to Volume 2. Volume 2 talks about accounting and finance, and Chapter 20 is about internal controls. That's essentially an accounting word for segregation of duties, which is also an accounting term, but it says that you should have more than one person looking at every transaction that you do where money is involved, and it gives you some ideas on how to set up some of those controls so that embezzlement can't occur, or is less likely to occur. There was a statistic that's from a few years back, but it probably still applies, that 1 out of every 3 congregations has some form of embezzlement occur. I don't know over what time span that is, but it's just an area that you need to be aware of and take measures to control what goes on, especially with the finances within the congregation. There's a sample chart of accounts in Chapter 21. The chart of accounts has not only income and expenses, but also has balance sheet items. I'll talk a little bit more about the balance sheet in just a second here. But this chart of accounts can help you to kind of figure out how to organize your financial information a little bit. Budgeting, a chapter about budgeting, how to do it. It's fairly basic stuff, but if you need some ideas, if you need some ideas on how to present your budget to the congregation, how to talk about your budget, this chapter could be useful in those areas. Accounting applications. So this is how accounting rules are applied to certain concepts. And this is where you get into some of the balance sheet stuff. You get into endowments. How do you treat endowments? And unfortunately, many congregations don't have a balance sheet. All they have is an income statement. An income statement being, this is our sources of income, and this is how we're spending our money. And many congregations can get away with that. That's how many households operate. Most households, I would say, probably operate that way. But when you're dealing with a larger organization, knowing the rest of the accounting is important. Knowing what your assets are and what their values are, knowing what your liabilities are, who do you owe money to, how much, what's the payback period, and all that kind of stuff. And then your net assets are endowments and those sorts of things that maybe are held on your books for a longer period of time to track all that stuff. So accounting applications are very important. And then Chapter 24 kind of goes along with that and says, okay, not only do we have an income statement, but we have a statement of financial position, which is another name for a balance sheet. And then if you're really sophisticated, you might even have a cash flow statement. I would say that probably 99% of our congregations don't have cash flow statements, but those are the three things that would be required. The next chapter is financial review. And so a financial review, so I am a CPA, and even I cannot do an audit of your congregation financial statements. And the reason for that is because I'm not licensed in the state of Missouri. But I can do a financial review, but your congregation can do a financial review itself. A financial review is simply a watered down audit done internally by members of the congregation, or it can be done by external members as well. If you want to partner up with another congregation, you certainly can have another congregation come in and help you with the financial review. So the financial review, one strategy around that might be you have an audit every third year, and the other 2 years you do a financial review. So there are really good tools in there. It's very intensive. There's a lot of things. Another strategy around financial reviews is you don't do everything every year. You look at one part one year, you look at a different part another year. And honestly, that's the way auditors do it too. They don't look at everything. They look at different things in different years. Section 3 is insurance. And really, there's only one chapter there. It's risk management and insurance. And honestly, I think that the chapter is heavy in insurance and doesn't talk much about just risk management, little things that you can do to manage risk within your congregation. Have somebody that is kind of the risk management person. Usually it's somebody that's familiar with facilities, and look at things like, is there an area that's the floor is always wet, and what are we doing about it? The floor is slippery. Do we have a mop there and mop it up and then put a sign up, or do we put a carpet down to make it a little safer? Those sorts of things, or maybe there is a carpet down and the carpet bunches up and now it's a trip risk. So risk management includes that kind of stuff. It includes having policies, and some of those policies, they're hard to develop, they're hard to follow sometimes, but it's always good to have them, to look at policies and even look at sample policies. And so there are 3 really good sources for sample policies, and those are your insurance companies. Brotherhood Mutual, Church Mutual, and Guide One all have sections on their website that have policies. So policies about, for example, sexual misconduct type stuff. That would be one. Cybersecurity is another area where there's risk there. So take a look at those three companies' websites, and you'll get a lot of ideas on risk management and how you can manage that within your congregation and within your schools. The Congregational Treasurer's Manual, when it comes out every year, has a section of major changes, and I'm just highlighting this just to let you know, if you don't read the Congregational Treasurer's Manual cover to cover every year, not even I do that, but looking at the major changes kind of gives you an idea, okay, these are some new things I need to be aware of, and maybe they apply to me, maybe they don't, but at least this is a place to look for, okay, what's the weather like? Which way is the wind blowing these days? So now I want to talk a little bit about, did you know? So this is also kind of along the lines of the Treasurer's Manual, but did you know a housing allowance is an exclusion from income tax, but not from self-employment tax? So ministers of the gospel pay self-employment tax. They do not, your congregation does not pay FICA taxes on them. And so this chapter talks about that a little bit. Parsonage can be 100% excludable, and not just the building itself, but the utilities and the furnishings therein as well. Chapter 4, did you know that Concordia Plan Services lets the employer define the number of hours worked for full-time employment? And so this is important when you have more than one employee and you're struggling with your budget, you're trying to recruit somebody, you don't want to pay retirement benefits, you don't want to pay healthcare benefits. This kind of gives you a tool, but that being said, whatever you set, that's the standard for everyone, not just the pastor, not just the other person besides the pastor. It's a standard for everyone. So whatever you set within these three categories, it's for everyone. I'm going to kind of skip over this next one because there is a special guest that will talk about this share board thing. Chapter 6 talks about, did you know that any moving expenses, this kind of goes back to reimbursements, except that in this instance, in the instance of moving expenses, the IRS and Congress have gone back and forth on moving expenses, and as of now, moving expenses are not, that they are taxable to the employee. If you pay moving expenses on behalf of an employee that you move in from another state, they're taxable. And even within the state, if you move them from St. Louis to Kansas City, it's taxable. The payroll chapter, chapter 7, FICA taxes, organists are lay employees typically, and when they are, then you pay FICA taxes on them. And apparently, the publisher, the special super secret guest, thinks that this is one of the best chapters for treasurers. I'll talk about super secret in a little bit too. You may have seen this before, but beware of the IRS. Follow their rules. Chapter 7, did you know that all schools must file an IRS Form 5578? If your school is at all plugged in with the schools department here in the district office, they are aware of this, but it's something that if you're a treasurer of your congregation, you should be asking the school if they are doing this. The deadline is outlined here on the slide. Contributions, did you know that the value of services do not qualify as a charitable deduction? What that means is that if you have a plumber in your congregation that comes in and does some work, the value of his work, though it is valuable to the congregation, it is not a tax deduction for the plumber. if he doesn't charge you. And if he does charge you, it's taxable income to him. So that's another way to say that. Did you know that every congregation of the synod should be incorporated? This is kind of a legal protection. It also helps organizationally for you to be incorporated. When you incorporate, there are certain steps that you have to take, and you have to have certain officers and all that kind of stuff. So it provides a legal protection. Yes. Purchasing agreements, I already talked about. There are some purchasing agreements that are available regarding moving, and that's kind of the biggest one in the area of purchasing agreements. And the thing about it is that those agreements are not just for the congregation and the roster church worker, but they are also for you and me. So if I want to move my parents from Ohio to Branson, I can contact Beacons and work within that group purchasing agreement, and it makes things a whole lot easier. So that's open to everyone, and there's a URL for it. Accounting applications, chapter 23, I often get phone calls about record retention, and there is an actual table in the treasurer's manual for record retention. It's not real easy to find, but the treasurer's manual does have an index, and that index could help you find that if you're looking for it. There's a specific example here, saving council meeting and voter assembly meeting minutes. That's something you should do, and really that goes hand in hand with insurance, that if the council decides on something, the congregation has decided. If you get sued later, it's the congregation, and then the insurance would kick in. So assuming you have insurance for that particular issue. Financial review. So I talked about this already, and I also talked about not calling it an audit. Well, maybe I didn't say you shouldn't call it an audit, but if you do a financial review, you should not call it an audit. Only a CPA that is an active CPA in your state can conduct an audit. Other people can pretend they did an audit, but what that does is it opens you up then to liability that you might not otherwise have if a CPA did it. CPAs usually carry their own insurance, and they follow certain procedures that are generally accepted, that essentially is a standard that you have to follow. Risk management. This is talking about having hired a non-owned automobile liability. If you rent vehicles, a lot of times that provides a lot better coverage than if you take out the insurance that you would get at the rental car company, and it's a broader coverage because it's usually wrapped around your entire insurance policy, so it's well worth having that. Okay, now we're going to move on to a special guest that we have with us today. His name is Ralph Simon, and he works for the LCMS Foundation. The LCMS Foundation is one of our synodical entities that was formed specifically to help congregations deal with issues related to endowments and investing, that sort of thing. So with that, here is Ralph Simon.
Thank you, Pete. Great work. Very interesting presentation. So one thing to be aware of is the word endowment means a lot of different things. I often compare it to the word automobile. It could be a Bentley or it could be a Mini Cooper. So when you're talking in a group about endowments, you might not all be on the same page with that conversation. So we would designed a booklet to help with that. It's called Long-Term Ministry Funding. I've sent some to Pete that he'll have on hand if you're in his office, or we can certainly mail them out to you, but it helps your organization decide what is the best design of definition of endowment that you want to work with. So we help congregations with that. We also can help treasurers, and the congregation might have a donor that is making a gift of stock. So we can help with working with the donor and usually the donor's broker to liquidate that sale. So it saves the congregation from needing to go through the paperwork and expense of opening a brokerage account. Is we are here to do that. Another thing to be aware of is there are other organizations out there with the word Lutheran in them. It's not a copyrighted word, but we are the only organization that was actually created by Synod for this purpose of helping ministries with long-term investing. There is a recorded webinar at the LCMS Rural Small Town Missions website that I did a couple of weeks ago that talks about the importance of outpacing inflation. Lutherans tend to be pretty conservative, and so there really is a lot of money sitting around at the bank that, you know, today you might be able to find 4% at the bank, but you're also living in a 6.5% inflation environment, which is then a guaranteed net loss of 2.5%. So we're working with the asset classes of stocks and bonds for long-term investing, just like we would say for retirement, and very similar to how Concordia Plans invests the pension that we're all looking forward to receiving. We also can help ministries that occasionally there is gifts of real estate, especially in rural areas. You'll have farms or homes that are left. And then we can also help with, doesn't happen in the metropolitan area here, but in the rural areas, gifts of corn and beans, we can help with the paperwork on that. We have in-house staff that can give you guidance on that. Just call us at the LCMS Foundation. And then Pete's got a couple slides. We offer these investment services. We work with these 4 asset classes. So the bank is working with the asset class of cash. We're working with stocks in the United States, stocks around the world, bonds, high quality bonds, US government and government agencies, and US high yield bonds. And those are bonds of companies that just don't have a good credit rating, but they're household names like General Motors, and Ford, Sprint, AutoZone, that often are high yield bonds, but don't carry a huge amount of risk, but help with the portfolio management. So we take those 4 asset classes and we build what Wall Street would call asset allocation funds. So the one in the middle is 50-50 stocks and bonds at no additional cost for the ministry. We rebalance it back to those percentages of 50-50 stocks and bonds on a monthly basis. And because we're organized as part of Synod, there's no commission salespeople. There's a very low expense structure, and we're able to partner with all the Lutheran churches and seminaries and universities around the country to achieve great discounts in working with money managers. So the expenses that are in our operations are usually about 25 to 30% of what you would find in a mutual funds family. And so while what we offer kind of smells like mutual funds, it's at a much lower cost. And in a competitive marketplace that we've been in, the lower the cost, the better the returns. Pete, is there any questions you have?
I do not have any questions. We do have Ralph's contact information here, and if you know, I will talk a little bit later that, you know, Ralph as well as Dave Kuschel, our next guest, and many others are my back office. And I want you all to think of me as your back office. So if you have questions, you can contact me. And then, if it's related to endowments and that sort of thing, I will, put you in touch with Ralph or whoever's the right person at the foundation or other entity. So I'm saying that here. I'm going to say it again. Contact us when you need help, or even if you think you need help or just have a question. So with that, we're going to move on to the next special guest. His name is David Kuschel. He is with Concordia Plans. I think they've rebranded now. There used to be Concordia Plan Services, and I've been told they're just Concordia Plans now. They have created this thing called ShareBoard, and it's really good. And I believe that for all of you out there, that this is going to be a really good thing. So David, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. So Pete talked a little bit earlier about Concordia Plans came up, health, retirement, disability. That is certainly, kind of our bread and butter, how we've been established here. But we do have other resources and tools that we're launching. I'm really excited about this one. So ShareBoard launched about a month ago. Actually, it was February 15th, so a month ago. And basically what it is, as you can see here, it's an online platform for lay leaders at your ministry to connect and share questions and answers. So really short version of how this came about. One of our vice presidents, Reverend Ken Krieger, he used to be a lay person before he went to seminary and was at a church in the Phoenix area and was going through some particular challenges at the time. And there was nobody at the church who had experienced those kinds of things and gone through those. And he thought, well, it'd be really great if there was a place I could go online and I could ask these questions. And I could say, how do you deal with this? Or what would you do about that? And all these years later, he's come here to be one of our VPs. And a year ago, we started going down this path and we launched a month ago. So as I said, it's an opportunity to share, educate lay leaders. Are you controlling the slides, Pete, or am I? I guess you are.
I am.
All right, you can move on to the next slide. That'd be great.
Okay.
So here's what ShareBoard looks like. I'll talk a little bit more in another slide about like who it's for and what we do on there. But on ShareBoard, it's kind of just like a social site, right? If you're on Facebook or if you're on LinkedIn, things like that. But it's a place where you can post messages, post questions, respond to questions. You can access resources. You can connect with other lay leaders across the country. It is completely free to use. All people need to do when they sign up is tell us their name, their email address, and what ministry they are affiliated with or they belong to. So there is no price of admission. Everyone gets in to use ShareBoard, and really, really excited about it. So that's kind of what it looks like when you get in. On the next slide is the beginning. I included another couple slides in here. Everyone who comes into ShareBoard is into what we call our All Leaders community. And in the All Leaders community, we have discussions happening. So if you can read it, it's a little small, but you can read some of the discussions we have. How do you onboard new lay leaders? Tell us something that's happening at your ministry that you're excited about. Someone posted a question about elders, about how elders work at a particular church. So there are a lot of different topics that are coming up on ShareBoard. Some of them are being fed in by us here at Concordia Plans as we're getting started. And some of them are coming from others, which is awesome. This is the resource library, and you can see there are resources to download. There's a video there that I did about using ShareBoard, but there are also resources. Some folks here at Concordia Plans have written some. I really think they could be useful to ministries, different types of ministries. Those are downloadable, accessible to ShareBoard users. On the next slide is information about who ShareBoard is for. And you can see on the left, as I said, everybody goes into All Leaders, but we have these other kind of sub-communities set up, councils, boards, council and board treasurers, you can see. So on ShareBoard, as of today, we have about 235 people have signed up to use ShareBoard, and a bunch of those are going into these different communities. So if that's interesting to you, you could go to ShareBoard, you could join, you'd be in All Leaders, you could join the treasurer group, you could start asking questions, posting resources, things like that. And you can see the discussion questions. I mentioned some of those, the kinds of things that people are talking about on ShareBoard. think I might have one more or two more left. Oh, one more. So this is it right here. This is how you get to Shareboard. You can go to concordiaplans.org/shareboard or directly at cpshareboard.org or scan this QR code. I would invite you to check it out and encourage other lay leaders in your ministry to check it out as well. It's not just for treasurers, of course. It's for council presidents, council members, Board of Education members, things like that. And we really want to spread this, like I said, free to use, and we want it to be available to lay leaders all over the synod to kind of raise their level of knowledge and skills and learn from each other. It's not Concordia Plans selling, and it's not Concordia Plans giving out all the knowledge. We're really hoping for people to learn from each other. So thank you, Pete, for the time, and I encourage anyone to check it out.
Thank you, Dave. And I want to say also that this is just one of the things Concordia Plans is doing. They have a number of different things that they're doing on behalf of congregations. They are a very positive influence on our synod and working with congregations to help them with a number of tools. So thank you, Dave.
Appreciate that.
Now pretend that I am Carol White with the Lutheran Church Extension Fund. Carol is helping the Missouri District currently. We have a vacancy in the district, and Carol is from the Iowa West District as the Lutheran Church Extension Fund Vice President there. And she gave me some slides, and I'm going to present them, and hopefully I will do them justice. So the first thing that, so what I ask is for resources that these other entities are providing. So one of the resources that Lutheran Church Extension Fund has now is a program called Ministry Clarity. And if you look at the right, Ministry Clarity is essentially to help ministries to find clarity in how they're approaching ministry, what they're doing. Are they focused well enough? Where should they be focusing, and that sort of thing. So they go through a visioning process, planning, they talk about their facilities, they talk about their finances, they talk about their communication strategy, and kind of end up with probably a 3-year program that then is utilized by the congregation to move forward in a very clear, concise direction, for the purpose of all the reasons that the church exists, reaching new souls, helping those who are in the pews to further their understanding and those sorts of things. So Ministry Clarity is one program. Real Estate Solutions is another thing. So Lutheran Church Extension Fund really is kind of the brick and mortar arm of the Lutheran Church, and they were formed to kind of help with the whole thing of financing congregations, buildings, and that sort of thing. And so having money come in from Lutherans and utilizing that money to build churches and schools and that sort of thing. And Real Estate Solutions then is just kind of an offspring of that, where now, a congregation may have real estate and want to divest, or a congregation may see an opportunity next door where some land is being sold and want to purchase that land for future expansion. And so Real Estate Solutions kind of can help them walk through that process and think it through a little bit and help them make good solutions. Currently, there is a program out there. So LCF is looking to raise funds. And so individual congregations and organizations can all currently invest at a rate of 4% for 1 year. So it's a 1 year fixed rate of 4%, which is a good return right now. If you have your money in the bank, you're probably getting a 0.5% or something like that. So if you're looking for a place to invest some excess funds for a shorter duration, or even for a longer duration, this is something that you might want to look at. LCF is also now has a mobile app. And so that's just kind of moving forward in technology a little bit and making LCF a little bit more like some of the service that you get from your local bank or credit union. And just another way that they are continuing to expand their services. So that's it for my babushka presentation. Now I'm going to move on, and essentially I'm moving back to Concordia Plans, another tool that they have out there. And so what I want to talk about is there are really, for compensation decisions, there are really two tools that we have in the Missouri District. One is this tool provided by Concordia Plans. And there are two components to the Concordia Plans tool. One is designed for schools, and the other is designed for congregations, but they are essentially the same in kind of how they operate. And so the compensation tool, if you look at it, if you actually go to the website and look at it, the username and password are on the home page. And, that's a little puzzling when you first look at that. The username, the user ID is CPS, capital and all caps, and the password is the same thing, CPS and all caps. That was done simply so that someone can't just, some robo machine can't just, get into there and start messing with it. But this is a tool available to all congregations in the LCMS. And it works really well when you have a congregation that has just a few employees. So I'm in the school side of things, so it's really easy to use. You put in, there's a drop-down menu for teacher. I don't know if you could see my pointer or my cursor, but there's for the position of teacher, you put in your zip code, you select the school, and then you hit submit, and you get a report. And the report has kind of the midpoint, the market, higher pay, lower pay, and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of actual other information that you get. You get, I don't know, 4 or 5 pages, I think, when you do this. This particular tool, if you look at it, at the top there, you see it's a teacher with a specific school ID, 0 years of experience, a bachelor's degree. You can put in an additional factor if you want, and it spits out this information, and you could utilize it to set salary. So this is a great tool. I highly encourage congregations to use it and schools to use it. It works very well, and it's very scientific. It actually uses Concordia Plan data, and it uses other data as well, information from outside of the LCMS circle. So it's a good tool to get really, really good data. What I don't like about it is if you have 50 employees, you have to go in you have to go into this tool 50 times and put each person's information in. So it gets a little cumbersome if you have a large staff. And in that case, I like the district's compensation guidelines better. If you do actually read the district compensation guidelines, you'll find that we're incorporating the Concordia Plans tool into part of our compensation guidelines as well. But what I like about it is if you look at this table, it's easy to determine someone's salary based on years of experience and educational level. There are some other factors that the guidelines, have you do a worksheet for each individual as well. But it's a very easy way to administer compensation for a larger group of people, and for that reason, I like it for the larger organizations. So that's it on compensation. And now I wanted to give you some other resources. So this is from the LCMS. So the LCMS has, if you look at the URL at the bottom there, resources for church and school administration. And you can see there are various things, or hopefully you can see that active shooter response plans. I'm not big on that, but constitution of bylaws, financial matters, Congregational Treasurer's Manual, we talked in depth about that. Legal resources, I really encourage you to look at the legal resources side of things. The Alliance Defending Freedom has created some documents when you're talking about letting other groups utilize your facilities. Facility use policy is becoming very contentious legally because you have so many anti-Christian people out there that are trying to shut down churches and having lawsuits against congregations, that sort of thing. So I really encourage you to have a good look at the legal resources and specifically at facility usage policies. There's some other resources out there as well. And with that, we're coming to the end here. This statement, I like the part about I will put you in charge of many things. So now that you've gone through this, someone's going to put you in charge of even more stuff. Maybe you'll put yourself in charge of more stuff. I don't know. But, you know, keep up the good fight. It's there's a lot of work being done by a lot of good people. And I offer you encouragement and resources. My name, if you don't know it by now, I work for the Missouri District. My name, Peter Krege. I'm technically the CFO is my title, but more generically, business manager of the district. And you have up there my office number, the main number, and my direct line, and my email address as well. And so with that, I'd like to go into Q&A. Before I do that, though, I'd like to again thank our special guests, Ralph Simon and Dave Kuschel. Thank Carol for the information that she sent over here. Thank you all for participating. And we'll go into, I want to say one more time that the Missouri District is your back office. Ralph and Dave are my back office. And I even have a super secret back office with people like Roger Curtis, who provided a lot of these slides for me from Iowa West District. There are a lot of people that know a lot of things, and sometimes you just need to know the right person to talk to. I've been around a while. I know a lot of these people, and so I'm willing to help your congregation in any way we can. So with that, if you have questions, put them in the, I guess there's a Q&A box. Can you provide a document with a list of all the links of tools and websites referenced today? Elsa, do you want to respond in chat to that? I believe that this webinar will be put online, and then there may be other ways as well.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well then, thank you all again for attending, and give me a call if you need to, and even if you don't need to. All right. One other thing I did not mention that I kind of wanted to touch on is that sometimes there is conflict in congregations, and we do have some resources for conflict resolution and that sort of thing as well. So if your congregation is struggling in that way, please contact the district office as well for that kind of stuff. All right, thank you all, and have a good day.